How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm Warren Thompson, and ever since we got the Secret Invasion finale a couple of days ago, Marvel fans have had a lot of questions. Like, what exactly is Gaia going to be up to now that she's pretty much the strongest character in the Marvel Universe? At least that we know of so far. What's going on with Nick Fury? What's going on with his wife and that X-Men Easter egg that we discovered? There are a lot of questions right now, but of course, the biggest question that fans are asking right now is, when did Rhodey become a Skrull? When did the Skrull, Rava, take over Rhodey's life? There have already been a lot of theories and predictions about this, and a lot of them make sense, but it looks like Marvel Studios is doing something very specific when it comes to answering this question. And what they're actually doing is kind of not being specific at all, but there is a very intentional reason for this. Now, recently in an interview with comicbook.com, the director of Secret Invasion, Ali Selim, did actually address when Rhodey becomes a Skrull. He does give a definitive answer of when, but he gives a two-part answer that also leaves some stuff open. And of course, we're going to break the whole thing down and explain what you need to know, including what we think Marvel's specific plan is for this. And if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest news or breakdowns. And if you subscribe and leave a comment, you're automatically entered in our giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox Series X, a PS5, some Marvel Legends items, or some DC items. The winner gets to pick one item, and we pick a winner at the end of each month. So of course, everybody is asking questions right now about Rhodey, when he became a Skrull. A lot of people think it could be after Civil War, and a lot of people who think that could be right. In an interview with comicbook.com, Secret Invasion director Ali Selim said this: a lot of people have asked about definitively when did Rhodey, implying when did Rhodey become a Skrull? When did Rava take over? He continued to say, I think his legs not working in the end of episode 6 and him being in the hospital gown points to Captain America Civil War. So this statement right here would tell us that Rhodey is wearing the same hospital gown that we saw him in at the end of Civil War, the exact same one. As far as the internet can tell, we have found zero differences in these two hospital gowns. They look to be exactly the same. So the director here is telling us that this is the same gown. And the fact that it's the same gown points to Captain America Civil War, heavily implying that this is when Rhodey was switched with a Skrull. He also talks about his legs not working. And of course, after the events of Civil War, Rhodey's legs didn't work. We saw him begin the process of physical therapy. We also saw that he had some Iron Man tech on his legs helping him walk. And we assume that over the years, he got better at walking on his own and possibly relied less on the technology. Although in Avengers Infinity War, we do still see that he is wearing the devices on his legs that help him walk. But the director here is implying that since Rhodey cannot walk, he's implying that this is the Rhodey that got injured in Civil War and didn't really have any physical therapy because it was the Skrull doing that the entire time. Now, this would be a definitive answer, and he states that people want a definitive answer, but then he goes on to kind of give a part 2 to this question after he says, I think his legs not working in the end of episode 6 and him being in the hospital gown points to Captain America Civil War. He says this, and from there, does it have to be definitive? Or is it more fun for the audience to go back and revisit every moment, every Rhodey moment, and look at it with a different lens now that they think, oh, he might have been a Skrull there, and make the decision for themselves, or it'll be answered in Armor Wars. So he goes from giving a definitive answer to giving pretty much the most vague answer you can get. And here's the deal. I think that Marvel is doing this on purpose. And the reason I think they're doing this on purpose is because I don't think they actually know which direction they want to go. But it almost does sound like they are retconning Rhodey's story in the MCU. Because I don't think that this was the plan at any point in time. I don't think 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when Endgame came out, this was the plan. I don't think it was ever a plan for Rhodey to be a Skrull. But when they decided that Secret Invasion was going to be a Disney Plus show and that they were going to reveal that some of the Avengers that we knew this entire time were Skrull, I think that's when the retcon started. They went, well, we could say Rhodey was a Skrull the entire time because he's in a high position of power in the government. He was a pretty big character. He's part of the main cast in some movies, but he's not one of the original main Avengers, so it's not that big of a slap in the face to fans, whereas it would be if we said Iron Man was a Skrull the entire time, or Black Widow was a Skrull the entire time. I believe that's why they picked Rhodey. He was big enough, but not part of the main ensemble of the Avengers team, and his high position of power in the United States government made it make sense for them to choose him as a Skrull, because a Skrull would want to infiltrate a position of power. So really, I think there are two options here. One, Marvel is indeed retconning the story of Rhodey, which will in turn negate some things that we've seen happen, and I'll explain these things in just a bit. But if they do retcon Rhodey's story, they'll say, much like the director hinted at, that Rhodey has been a Skrull since the events of Civil War. The second option is that they can say that Rhodey was taken after Avengers Endgame. Now, if you have a preference of which option you'd like to be true, please let us know why and which one in the comments down below. Him being a Skrull after Civil War, or him being a Skrull after Avengers Endgame. Here's the problem, and here's why it would have to be a complete retcon. There are some continuity points that they would have to kind of ignore. One is that we have seen Rhodey without any support on his legs, without any type of War Machine armor or Tony Stark tech on his legs, not being able to walk. We saw this in Avengers Endgame. When the Avengers headquarters got taken down, Rhodey had to get out of his suit and he had to crawl. He could not use his legs. This heavily implies that this is indeed the real Rhodey. Why would Rava at that time in a life or death situation still continue to act like she is Rhodey and cannot use her legs? If it's life or death for her, she's gonna use her legs and get up. And she could just have found a way to explain it. Oh, at the time, my adrenaline was kicking in and all of a sudden I got strength back in my legs because I was fighting for my life. That's what she could have said as Rhodey. But instead, we see Rhodey crawling because he cannot use his legs. This tells us that this was indeed Rhodey. That's why if they did say that Rava took over right after the events of Civil War, it would have to be a retcon in the MCU. Another reason is a big reason that my buddy Paul over at Heavy Spoilers brought up in a recent video of his. He explains that Gravik was still working for Nick Fury after Avengers Endgame. He was one of the Skrull who helped collect the blood samples, the DNA samples on the battlefield after the big fight. This implies that Gravik and Nick Fury were still good. So that means they might not have had rebelled yet, and they might not have taken over positions in the government yet, meaning Rava might not have taken over as Rhodey yet. It's a great point that Paul makes, and it seems like from what we have learned in the series that Gravik and the rest of the Skrull didn't really become irritated with Nick Fury until after everyone came back. You can't really blame Nick Fury for being snapped. It wasn't his choice, it wasn't his fault. But after he came back from the blip, he went up to Saber and never came back and didn't do anything. That's when the Skrull started to get irritated and betrayed by Nick Fury. That is when Gravik kind of took everything into his own hands with the rest of the Skrull rebellion. So this would have to be another retcon. But again, I think that Marvel Studios is kind of waiting to feel out the situation. I think that they haven't really decided what to do yet. I had the opportunity to speak with director Ali Selim as well. This was when I had only seen the first 2 episodes of Secret Invasion, but I asked him if any previous show or movie or any upcoming show or movie had affected the story for Secret Invasion. And he said no. He said that he did his own thing. They made the story that they wanted to make. Now, of course, everything has to go by Kevin Feige, but again, like I stated before, in the moment, I think they went, oh yeah, it would make sense for Rhodey to be a Skrull. Let's go with that. And Don Cheadle even talked about this. He said, oh yeah, when they came up with that idea, they called me in to talk about it, and I went, oh yeah, this would be cool. It would be cool to play kind of a different Rhodey. So I think at the time, that was all they thought about. That was their plan. And then, of course, they thought, well, fans are going to wonder how long has Rhodey been a Skrull for? And perhaps they didn't have an answer to that at the time because they went, well, it could be many points. We're still writing Armor Wars right now, so let's wait a little bit to decide. We don't have to decide right away. And I think that's why the director said in this interview, or you'll find out in Armor Wars. I think he said that pretty ambiguously because he himself doesn't really know, possibly because Marvel Studios doesn't exactly have an answer for us yet. But the first part of his answer does make it seem like they might have gone with the fact that Rhodey is wearing the same gown, because that is put in the finale. That is in the episode. He's wearing the same gown. So it looks like Marvel Studios could have gone with the decision of, yeah, he's been a Skrull since Civil War, in which case that means some of these scenes with Tony Stark and the rest of the Avengers might not mean as much. And if that is the case, let us know your thoughts about that in the comments down below. How do you feel about that? Which would you prefer, him being a Skrull since Civil War or him being a Skrull since after Avengers Endgame? Leave all your thoughts down below. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos. You can also find us on Patreon. You can check out our website and our Discord server. And of course, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.